Thanks, Beth. You know, as Ed referred to, Frederick Douglass, the freed slave, the pioneer of freedom, and the greatest orator of his day, was a lifelong Republican. And then 100 years later, the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., civil rights pioneer, greatest orator of his day, was also a lifelong Republican. How do we make that the standard again? That's the question before us, and I want to suggest 3 things we need to think about today: tone, building common ground, and reclaiming the American dream. A tone should be pretty obvious. We've got a perception problem. If the GOP were a business, you know, I don't know, pick one like Tiger Woods, you might say you got a public relations issue that you got to address. There are certain things that you have just got to change the public's perception about. That's why we have to focus on tone. Now, I'm not saying all the criticisms of the GOP are valid. As my wife indicated to you, many of them are not. But we find ourselves in a particular place. Back when I was a trial lawyer, I didn't bemoan what jury I had, but once they were in the box, I just said to myself, well, this is where I am. How do I talk to them now, at this time, about these issues? And that's what I want to suggest to you that we do. And there are a few things I think we ought to keep in mind. Bev referred to the buyer's remorse. One of the things we need to do is make sure that voters who voted Democrat their whole life or voted for Obama this next time feel welcome if they come back to us. We need to be a welcoming place for them. I would suggest we not start the conversation with a wag of the finger and I told you so. If you've ever started a conversation with your spouse that way, you know it doesn't go well. You're not going to get what you want out of it. Likewise, I would suggest that we look to the future instead of refighting past battles. I love to talk policy. I love to talk history. And I've got friends and relatives that I sit and do it with to the point that we annoy everybody else and they leave the room. One of my brothers-in-law is here, and we did that yesterday and drove everybody else out. I love to do that. Many of you may. Most people don't. Most people want to hear about things that they care about, and they don't want to refight past battles. Imagine someone comes to your house, and your house is a mess. And they say, your house is a mess. And you say, well, my neighbor's house is worse. It really doesn't help you, does it? I mean, it doesn't make them feel welcome. And sometimes I think we do that politically. They will come with a criticism of us, a fair criticism. They may suggest we double the national debt during the prior Republican administration, and now we're talking about spending. That's a fair criticism. We have to address it. But instead of being defensive, what we need to do is say, yes, we're putting our house in order. We're straightening up, and we want this to be a place where you're welcome. That's how we get there. We make the house welcoming today, because if we want to refight past battles all the time, you know what we can do? We can win arguments and lose elections. And that we can't afford to do anymore. I don't know about you, but it's been a while since I voted, at least at the top of a ticket, for the candidate I really wanted to vote for. I spent a lot of time voting against people. And you can't build a stable relationship on that. I voted for Ronald Reagan in 1984. The first election I was old enough to vote for president, and I was proud to do it. I haven't had that enthusiasm since. And you can't build a sustainable majority and accomplish things in this country doing it that way. Imagine if we tried to do it that way in other parts of our lives. How well do you think a church would do if all the members decided, well, they're going to join this church because they hate it less than all the other churches in town? This wouldn't work. Or, you know, guys say you marry a woman because she's just not as bad as everybody else in your town. And if any of you did that, I want to apologize for using that particular example. But we have to create a tone where people feel welcome. We've got to stop refighting the old battles and open up the doors and be ready for criticism. And that's part of the way we build common ground.